We're going to go to each table. You're going to introduce yourself, and you're going to talk about your books. And I know some people have more books than others, so, you know, we have time until people start coming in to buy your book. So introduce yourself and talk about your book. We're going to go table by table. So I give you kind of like eye contact as to which table we're going to go to next, instead of anyone speaking out of turn. So how we're going to do this, we'll start with you since we're here. We'll start with you. You can introduce yourself.
My name is Daniel Moses, and first book was a collection of my high school literature, running a reading contest in the 6th grade. I read over 117 books, and I made some poems that I was kind of noted for. A gentleman by the name of Art Linkletter at a convention got me started in publishing my book. My latest, of course, is a couple years old, but I was at the University of Phoenix that published the first sexual harassment study in a major corporation in Florida. And this is on easel here when I was making the announcement of the book. Later, Anita Hill being given a silver bowl for coming out with that subject matter. This is on it's in Capitol Hill in 1999. A little bit about my real past. I was a genealogist. I went back to the early 1800s on my mother's family. No, early 1700s on my mother's family research. And early in that on my father went back to publish. This right here is the early great-grandfather in the Civil War and the family collection. But of course went back to the 1300s on that side.
Okay.
My name is Taretha Wright, and I'm an author of several books. My main focus is on historical fiction and Southern women's fiction. I also write essays and poetry. I've been doing this for about 21 years. My latest book is, where is it? My latest book is Ties That Bind Us. And what this is Ties That Bind Us, Cleo's Song. My first book that I wrote back in 2002 was Ties That Bind Us, Ivy's Passion. So about 20 years later, I did the sequel and ended it all. So this is Ties That Bind Us. The book that I won an award for is called Secrets of the Harvest. And I also wanted to let you guys know that I also help new authors get their works published too. So if you're interested in publishing a book, just let me know and I can help you. I have business cards here. And this is my grandson, who is my helper, Jordan Wright.
Shabazz. I'm the founder of Project Nice Community Development Corporation, Dare to Live Consulting and Training Group, and co-founder of Dare to Live Media Group. We're here today and we have two books. The first book that we have today is called From Prison Walls to College Halls, Achieve Success in Face of Adversity. Actually, it's my journey throughout my life in the criminal justice life course till I'm becoming a doctor. So that's what this is. This is my book, From Prison Walls to College Hall, Achieve Success, Face of Adversity. It discusses the traumas that come along with living in poverty. It's amazing because we're on North Main. This is where I grew up at, and in a very poor neighborhood here. So this is a great book, not just for formerly incarcerated people, also for anyone who life has happened to them. Life has happened to them. My second book is I actually co-authored along with my lovely bride Dolores. It's called Reshaping the Entry in the 21st Century, a Critical Analysis. This is a research document. I've dedicated my life to the criminal justice life course and the collateral consequences after incarceration, and this is Reshaping the Entry in the 21st Century, a Critical Analysis. I compiled this with strictly research. This is strictly a research document and some research that I've done myself. I'm the creator of whole person development as it relates to the biological, psychological, sociological, cultural, financial, and spiritual self. I created that entire dynamic. And we also have some great Project Nas t-shirts. As you can see, I have one on now. And come on out and let's talk and Even if we only talk, come on out, let's talk, get to know each other. Thank you.
Next. I've done 5 books. My first book was I Buried John F. Kennedy. In 1963, when President Kennedy was assassinated, I was a 22-year-old sergeant stationed at Arlington National Cemetery. And for 4 days, the president's body was never out of my sight. I was selected to head the casket team. So after 20 years of people asking me the same question, how were you, a little black boy from Sumter, South Carolina, got selected to head Kennedy's casket team? So I wrote this book to answer that question. This is my first book. It covers everything that happened during the assassination. I witnessed the autopsy, I witnessed the embalming and changing of the casket and all of that. My second book, Civil Rights in South Carolina. I'm a product of the NAACP, having joined as a teenager in 1954. This book covers the history of the NAACP and all of the legal cases in South Carolina from 1939 up through 2012. I wanted to go further, but the publishers say you got to cut it off here, but at least I include Steve Benjamin as being elected mayor of Columbia. The third book is on Dr. Lund Richardson of Morris College. He spent 43 years at Morris College. The school was about to close when he came aboard in 1974. Now it's a fine, upstanding institution over in Sumter. That was my third book. The fourth book was on the AME Church, of which I'm out of print at this point. But it tells a story about what happened in Manual 11 and the history of the AME Church. From beginning, how to become an elected bishop, and it's a very tough road to hoe. And it's costly, expensive, and can get dirty and nasty sometimes. They didn't want me to publish it, but that's out. That will be forthcoming. And the fifth book is on McKinley Washington, who died last year. McKinley was from the Low Country, served in the South Carolina Senate and the House for over 50 years. Died, and we buried him back home in Sumter, where he and Jim Cliven and I grew. There's something in that Sumter water. Anyway, those are the 5 books I have done, and if you have any questions, bring them over here. I'll answer them for you. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Derek Jackson. I am the co-author with Dr. Goldman on the book Rites of Passage that we probably wrote almost 30 years ago. It's about bringing our young people to adulthood, because we do it both for male and female. And then we decided that that wasn't enough, just to write a book on Rites of Passage. We got together along with Mark Carew. He's now among the ancestors, our brother Joe Benton, who also helped us with the Rites of Passage book, and also with Should Black Organizations Be African-Centered, along with our sister Tanya Bryce. That's about all I wanted to say, Vern.
My name is Bernard Goldman. I'd like to thank the sponsors of this event for giving us this opportunity. And I would like also to give my appreciation to all the authors here, because from the effort that we made, we know it ain't easy. And special thanks to Ms. Taretha Wright, who is my editor, and I want to lift her up also. Aside from the books that Baba Derek mentioned, I just want to add one more thing about Project Sankofa, the Rites of Passage program. When we initially wrote it back in the late 1990s, it was basically a philosophy and theory. But what we've done is we've added some of the actual exercises that we've used for children. So we've expanded it, and it's almost twice as long now. And it's only a few months old. When I was growing up, I had teachers to blow my head up with thinking that I could write. And I think they were blowing my head up, but it stuck, so I started writing. And what we have here, first is my effort at an Afro-futuristic novel based in the future called To Be Human. The conflict continues, and I'm working on another one now called Saving the World. Hopefully it'll be ready by the end of the year. My pride and joy is Sankofa University. Sankofa University is a multi-phasic book, I call it, because it's not only semi-autobiographical, but it also has historical essays. It has an extended bibliography. For anyone who wants to learn about African history, I have probably about 40 pages of listings of books that you can read. And it also has biographical chapters on people who are and should be very important to us that we never get in school. People like Martin Delaney and Henry Highland Garnett. And here in Columbia, Matilda Evans. Most folk don't know who she was. This is a book that I co-edited many, many years ago along with Mama Marimba Ani and Obadele Williams, called To Be African. And we have actually a lineup of powerhouse African scholars, many of whom are ancestors now. And that it remains actually a very, very highly selling thing. And finally, I have to be a proud papa. My daughter wrote a book some years ago that was designed for young people who are entering the job market, and it's called Good on Paper, Great in Person, in which she gives advice to young people who are entering the job market on what they should and should not do. And she's actually currently writing a revision of this to expand it. So I want to thank you all for coming, and thank you all for considering looking at any of our efforts here. And again, thank the sponsors.
Hi everyone, my name is Natalie McKinney. I am the author of A New Crown of Glory, Finding Purpose in the Midst of Tragedy. This is my first effort at self-publishing a book, and the book came out of a tragedy that I experienced where I was robbed and sexually assaulted. And it talks about the triumph, the journey and the triumph. And it's an encouragement for other young women or anyone who's experienced any type of sexual assault or sexual violence to show them that they too can survive and they can thrive once they've healed. And out of this book, we started a support group for other young ladies in our church who've experienced sexual assault. Now it's become a ministry for me, and it's just a blessing to be able to share a tragedy that most people won't even want to talk about. But just to see how it's been a blessing to so many other people, it's just been an encouragement to me to keep going and to continue to share my story without shame. Mm-hmm. And that's the blessing. So thank you all. If you have any questions in reference to the support group that we started, we also share that information as well. I have my own business. I am the tragedy, the major triumph from that, the tragedy happened at my workplace. And since then, the person that I work for has retired, and I started my business in the same location. So there's redemption after a tragedy of such. God has a funny way of redeeming those, right? So that's the blessing. So I have an insurance agency, I have a consulting company, several different ventures that I'm involved in, and just to show that you can thrive after a situation of tragedy. Thank you.
Okay. How's everybody? Hi, my name is Wayne O'Brien. I'm a native Charlestonian, so Gullah Geechee land. the most African of all African Americans. When I started writing about 30 years ago, I started with ancient African history, because our beginnings doesn't start with slavery. So I went back maybe a little over 5,000 years, came forward, and that first major book was a book called Who is Rael? And it does connect Hebrews that came down into Africa as well. I didn't bring that particular book with me. I'm gonna tell you about the two I brought with me. The first one is called Flower in the Sand. It's the history and heritage of Bettis Academy. And what I've been doing over the last few years is I started to write a lot of the African American history that happened in the state of South Carolina, because it's good to find your own history that's local, so that you'll realize how rich it is. I heard a few things back with the gentleman from Sumter. A lot of this civil rights history goes back and is rooted in South Carolina. But this particular school, Bettis Academy, Flower in the Sand, was founded by a formerly enslaved African man named Alexander Bettis. Alexander Bettis, once he was freed, he started 40 churches, and he started having them pay dues to educational union so that they could send these children who had never had a chance to go to school to a school. In 1881, he decided that he wanted to start his own school. So he bought 27 acres of land in what they call the Sand Hills. If you're familiar with the way South Carolina is, it's the low country down near the coast. The Sand Hills is right in the middle. It cuts across the state. And then there's the upstate, and the mountains and things like that are up there. But the reason the Sand Hills are there is a few million years ago, the beach used to come up to this area. And the low country was underwater. And then as the ice accumulated on the poles, the water went down and exposed all that area, and it left all that sand here. When Alexander Bettis bought his 27 acres of land, the former slave owners weren't alarmed, because they said, what are you going to grow in sand? They didn't realize he wasn't trying to grow crops, he was trying to grow a school. So he started that school, one-room schoolhouse with about 20 students and about 1 or 2 teachers. And by 1900, they had 343 acres, over 25 major buildings, and they started in the first grade. They had an elementary school, a high school, and an accredited junior college. It was a boarding school. They had dormitories on the campus. So you could go to school in first grade and finish there with a college degree. They were training teachers. They had teachers' institutes there, the Farmers Institute. It was founded the same day as Tuskegee. And so Tuskegee and Bettis Academy were sharing information. All of the experiments George Washington Carver was doing down there at Tuskegee, he was sending his results to Bettis Academy. All the farmers would come to the school, and they would share that with them. Then they try it out on their farms and bring the results back to the school. This school was it was like a mini city. They had a mattress factory and a furniture factory, because they were teaching the children how to make everything. And then they could go out and make furniture and things for the community. They had a homeowners association that operated like a bank. So if you couldn't afford to buy any land, you could put your nickels and dimes with this homeowners association. They bought 5,000 acres of land around the school, divided into 50-acre farms, and then sold it back to the African Americans that lived in the area, at a very low rate, so that they could own land. This school had a hospital on one end of the campus, and everybody came there to have their babies. They were teaching nursing and midwifing, and they had a funeral home on the other end of the campus where they were teaching mortuary science. So they were I had people born on that campus, and they were also burying people on that campus. And so this was all started by one gentleman. And if you ride up the I-20 right now, when you get to the area of about North Augusta area, you'll see a Bettis Academy Road. You get off on Bettis Academy Road, they still own the 343 acres, and there's a museum on the campus, and they recently opened another school out there. This second book is In the Footprints of a Giant. It's about the largest, most elaborate slave revolt plan in the history of the United States. It was planned by a guy named Denmark Vesey in 1822. So if you ever go down to Charleston, you're going to hear a lot about Denmark Vesey. One of the things about Denmark Vesey, even though his plan was ratted out by some house slaves, and he was hung in 1822, nobody ever forgot what Denmark Vesey did. So when Frederick Douglass was recruiting people to go into the Civil War, he said, remember Denmark Vesey. Henry Highland Garnet, who we mentioned earlier, said, remember Dan Mark Vesey. In the 60s, during the Civil Rights Movement, we were saying, remember Dan Mark Vesey. And just recently, 2015, y'all know we had a shooting at the Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston. Dan Mark Vesey was one of the founding members of that church. He was actually planning the revolt in the church because he was a deacon and a Christian education teacher. So they're saying, if we do something for ourselves, God will help us just like he did in the Bible. And so he had this elaborate plan. But when that church got shot up in 2015, it was June 17th. And as soon as that happened, I knew it had something to do with Dan Mark Vesey, even though he had been dead almost 200 years, because Dan Mark Vesey's revolt was planned for June 16th, 1822. And June 16th in 2015 was going to fall on a Tuesday, which means that nobody would be in church because they did Bible study on Wednesday. So when that boy shot that church up on Wednesday the 17th, we knew it was about Dan Mark Vesey because he came from Lexington, traveled over 100 miles, past hundreds and hundreds of black churches just to go to Emmanuel, knowing that that was Vesey's church and that date. And when they finally arrested him and they had the trial, they found a piece of paper on the seat of his car that they used for evidence that had Dan Mark Vesey's name written on it. So it tells you about the power of what he tried to do. He was going to kill all the slave owners, take the boats, and sail everybody back to Africa. That was his plan. And so even to this day, he's a very, very powerful person, and people are still talking about him now. There's a statue of him in Charleston now, too, as well. They said it'd be a cold day in hell for you got a statue, but I guess they didn't have an overcoat on that day. Thank you.